This city has descended into such lawlessness, and the police have been so demeaned and disabled that they can't even investigate rape cases.
I wanted to start off today with a discussion of where we are on the crime issue. Of course, there was this shooting in Tulsa, 4 people killed by a 45-year-old man identified by police as Michael Lewis. He is an African-American 45-year-old man, went into a hospital, shot 4 people. So this will be in the gun control discussion, to be sure, and we can discuss what other narratives will come of this.
I think that'll be muted because it's a black guy who was the shooter.
I mean, we're certainly not going to have the discussion about the greatest threat we face from mass shooters and from domestic terrorists is white supremacy, which every time now there's a mass shooter who is white, the media jumps to find the statistics to show that, you know, the greatest threat is white supremacy. And then somehow it always turns into also January 6th and Trump supporters. And you say, wait, hold on. That seems like quite a leap.
Good jump. Yes.
But they do it constantly. And they do it with intellectual dishonesty in mind, and they do it to antagonize their political opponents. That's the whole point. But this story out of Seattle has me just this is, even for somebody who spends time looking at the lunacy, and this is from the Seattle Times, and we've obviously got a great radio station, great audience up in Seattle listening to this. Seattle Times published this, Clay. I'll just read this from the Seattle Times. Seattle Police's sexual assault and child abuse unit staff has been so depleted that it stopped assigning to detectives this year new cases with adult victims, according to an internal memo from the interim police chief. And then the article just goes into, Clay, the complete deterioration of law and order, such as it was in the city of Seattle, to the point where we know about the autonomous zone that was declared, where there, to the Chaz, yes, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, where there were 2 people who were murdered, there were sexual assaults. This is, if you look at the timeline, this will surprise no one. It goes back to 2020. It goes back to the undermining of police, to Democrat reform of police, to the BLM movement. And now you have one of our largest cities in the country unable to sign detectives to new rape cases because they don't have the personnel, Clay, because so many have quit because they don't want to be fed to the wolves, so to speak, of the media and the Democrat Party.
Seattle is one of the best cities in America when it's being run as a city should be run. And I know we've got a big audience that's listening to us right now in Seattle and all over the country, people who have visited Seattle and know what a fantastic place that can be. But it is the embodiment of left-wing rot and collapse that has taken over in this country, to a large extent directly connected to George Floyd 2 years ago. Because Seattle and Portland, maybe San Francisco too, I think it's pretty fair to say, Buck, the Pacific Northwest went crazy, primarily because they have the largest component of woke white people of any major cities in America, right? I don't think that's, if you were on a map plotting, hey, which 3 cities have the largest populations of woke white people in America, I think Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland would be the top 3 draft picks, right? I can't even think of, I know you could argue for the Chicagos or the New Yorks of the world, but per capita, Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland in some form or fashion in that order. And that woke white virus has destroyed the things that made those 3 cities so great. And one of the ways that they're destroying things is, when I saw this story yesterday, Buck, this is one of those where my jaw drops. I heard it. I think I heard it on Hannity last night. I was a guest on Hannity, and he mentioned it in the open of the show. And after I finished the show, I said, "Is that really true?" And Googled it. And then I saw your full article here too that we were talking about before we came on. This city has descended into such lawlessness And the police have been so demeaned and disabled that they can't even investigate rape cases. Rape cases. If you were going to rank crimes in a major cities, murder, obviously number one. Buck, I think rape probably number two on the severity and significance with which cases should be taken in terms of violent crime. Murder, bodies, someone actually dead. Other than that, this is a top-level violent crime that should be the focus in every major American city. They can't even investigate them.
This year alone, this is a quote from the article, everybody, 30 adult sexual assault cases that should have been assigned to a detective if I had proper staffing have not been. Okay? 30 adult sexual assault cases assigned to a detective if I had proper staffing, she said. This is a quote from one of the police personnel in the article. The detectives will still need to be working overtime. The cases can then be assigned, and there's a massive backlog. We're outside the cold. I'm reading from the article. We're outside the cold case backlog. I am not able to assign currently. Imagine you are one of the people who has been affected by this. You're a victim or a family member of a victim or just a friend or acquaintance of a victim who has been sexually assaulted in the city of Seattle, and you're being told, look, may take a couple of months, but we promise we're going to find the perpetrator. We promise we're going to look into this when we have the time. Now, people could say, well, this is such a massive failure on the part of law enforcement in Seattle, on the part of, well, no, it's on the part of leadership, political leadership in Seattle, because they've been losing officers. Over the past 2 years, the Seattle Police Department has lost a fourth of its cops over the past 2 years. Gee,
yeah.
What happened? Does anybody want to bust out a timeline? What's happened over the last 2 years? The city since then, since they realized this crisis, Clay, and it's a crisis. And by the way, when we dig into the numbers, I'm doing more and more of this now, digging into what's really happening in the city bureaucracies in New York and Chicago and Philadelphia and Houston and Seattle. You find it's just a total mess, just destroyed by wokeness and social justice, and a lot of people suffering, the whole city suffering as a result. They wanted to hire 40 new cops. They were able to hire 13. Gee, I wonder why that is. I wonder why cops aren't lining up in Seattle for a career where one video that goes viral for a second, where they have to, sometimes being a cop, and all my ex-NYPD buddies will
violence.
tell you, means you got to plant the bad guy on the cement and cuff him. That's what's actually going to happen. It doesn't always look pretty. But if we won't allow this as a society, then we have anarchy. And Clay, the number, I'm trying to even pull them up. The city of Seattle had it was like thousands and thousands of grand larcenies occurring. It's not that big a city.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about this, and this is, you worked in law enforcement to a certain extent too, Buck. I did criminal defense work. It's really hard to investigate rape cases in the first place. And that is because a lot of times it's he said, she said. A lot of times memories change. Witnesses can be tough to find. Oftentimes there's alcohol involved. All these things. Any case that is not immediately investigated becomes far more difficult to prove as time passes, because witnesses are harder to find. The whatever supplementary corroborating evidence there might be is more difficult to obtain. And just think, you mentioned it, if you are one of these likely 30 women or one of the family members of these 30 women, the phone call that they would get where they say, yeah, we know that you may have been raped, but we can't get to you for a few months. Everyone. I mean, this is such a colossal failure. The mayor of Seattle should have to resign, right? To me. The top elected officials in the city should have to resign.
I think it's a new mayor now, because the old mayor was so bad. But what you're finding, Clay, is that now it's systemic. It is truly within the system.
Right. But it's such a failure that we talk all the time about what consequences there can be for failure. Seattle has to. I think they already, didn't they elect a Republican for the first time in since the Reagan administration, I think, to be involved in city government in some way? I'm pretty sure that they did. And by the way, Seattle is one of our newest affiliates, 1090 The Patriot, KPTR, for everybody out there listening right now.
Can we put out a call out, by the way, to our KPTR?
Yeah.
If you're listening on KPTR,
yeah, let's hear from Seattle people about
and you
this.
want to tell us what's going on. I mean, your city, it's front page news now, main story on foxnews.com. Seattle Times story went viral. If you're a
You saw the picture too, Buck, the photo that went viral of the overpass with all the homeless people where it looked like Seattle was now a third world country. Did you see that photo that was everywhere? I mean, this is what Seattle is becoming known for.